The air in the Dresna Zix cantina smelled like burned ozone, overcooked meat, and a hint of spilled antifreeze. A busted ventilation fan spun overhead with the rhythm of a dying insect, trying to keep the haze of neon lights and exhaled fumes in motion. At the back corner booth, surrounded by empty chairs and a respectful amount of distance, sat a human child, legs swinging just above the floor. He wore an oversized t-shirt with faded earth lettering that read, "My dad can beat up. Your Galactic Emperor," and sipped a bubbling blue drink through a cracked straw. The locals knew better than to get too close. Even the bartender, a crusty, three-eyed mollusk named Drex, served his drinks down the bar's opposite end, occasionally glancing toward the kid with the kind of reverence reserved for unexploded ordnance. Then came the Mercenaries. Captain Vargan Crocs burst through the cantina doors, ducking slightly to avoid knocking his horned skull on the low frame. 9 feet tall, encased in scarred black armor, and trailed by a crew that looked like the winner's circle of an interstellar demolition derby, Crocs swaggered in with the casual arrogance of a creature who'd never been told no. His right arm was a pulse cannon retrofit. His left eye was a glowing red orb that twitched toward anything that moved too slowly. Behind him stomped GR-33T, a humanoid warbot with a face like a toaster and the personality of a sarcastic grenade. Rounding out the group was a 4-eyed marksman with a gambling habit, and a fashion-forward cyborg who sparkled with nanite jewelry and disdain for anything unfabulous. Crocs grunted at Drex, who silently slid a tray of 6 unlabeled drinks toward them without a word. "Now this," Crocs growled, spinning to face the bar, "is what I call a vacation. No patrols. No bounty council breathing down my neck. Just one glorious backwater rock where the only law is survival." His crew chuckled. The robot sounding like a shortwave radio dropped into a vat of acid. Then Crocs spotted the kid. He gestured with his pulse arm, squinting. "What's that doing here?" GR-33T ran a quick scan. Small human, male. Age, approximately 8 Earth cycles. Nutritional profile, 42% sugar, 38% sodium, 20% unidentifiable American preservatives. The kid looked up. His eyes were blue and annoyingly calm. He slurped his drink louder. "Lost, are you?" Crocs called out, turning halfway in his seat. "Wrong side of the stars for kindergarten, aren't you?" "Nope," the boy replied, softly. The mercenaries snorted. GR-33T added helpfully, "Humans are known for abandoning their young. It is likely this one's progenitor misplaced him during a primitive hunting ritual." "Or bowling," the boy tilted his head. "My dad's getting fuel." Crocs leaned back and let out a bark of laughter. "Fuel? From where?" "Your backyard barbecue. Ship? What's he flying? A Ford? You humans still build things out of rust and dreams." "Dad said you'd say that," the boy said, unfazed. "He says people laugh until they remember why they shouldn't." The marksman spat out a mouthful of yellow fizz. "You threatening us, shrimp?" The kid blinked, not threatening in the slightest. "No, he just said not to make fun of people you don't know." Crocs cracked his knuckles. "You hear that, boys? Little Squirt's gonna teach us manners." The bartender froze mid-polish, such a jukebox in the corner clicked, buzzed, and died. One of the locals, an amphibian trader with 2 heads, got up and left so quickly he left one of his heads behind, which floated nervously before zipping after him. Crocs noticed the shift. His voice lowered. "Who's your old man then, huh?" The kid tilted his drink, now half finished. "Riker Maddox." The name detonated like a silent charge. Crocs frowned. "Riker Maddox?" The cantina dropped into a stillness so complete, even the fan stopped spinning for a moment, as if afraid to offend. Drex slowly slid down behind the bar. The fashion cyborg turned pale, which was hard considering her skin was chrome. GR-33T's servo motors whined in confusion. "Scanning, cross-referencing, warning," Subject Riker Maddox has 17 galactic level. Warrants. Class, unapproachable. Status, living threat. Substatus, cosmic anomaly. Crocs laughed again, but it sounded forced. That's a myth. A ghost story. Maddox isn't real. The marksman leaned in. No, he's real. My cousin served at the Battle of Zebulon. Swore a man in a flannel shirt blew up a battlecruiser using a mop, 2 cables, and the power of an 80s soundtrack, Crocs sneered. No human can take out a battlecruiser solo. The boy tilted his head. He didn't say he was alone. He said Bon Jovi was with him. Another drink was dropped. The sound echoed. A reptilian merchant whispered, he was on Sardok Prime. Took out a whole dread regiment with nothing but sarcasm and a duct-taped shotgun. GR-33T beeped uncertainly. Confirmed. Numerous unverified accounts of Maddox weaponizing Earth relics, including cassette tapes, chewing gum, and something referred to as grilling energy. Crocs snarled. I don't care if he's real. He's not here. A new sound cut through the silence. A low, atmospheric hum. Outside, something massive pierced the gray skies above Dresna 6. A ship, obviously Earth-engineered but violently modified, hovered over the cantina. It looked like a war relic had mated with a muscle car and then been taught vengeance by a mechanic with abandonment issues. Its thrusters screamed, too loud, too brash, leaking black smoke and attitude. The kid finished his drink with a slurp and hopped off the booth. Dad's here. Croc stood, suddenly less confident. This is ridiculous. One human can't. The door exploded inward, not from force, but from presence. In stepped a man in a red flannel shirt, dark aviator sunglasses, and jeans scuffed by years of unfriendly terrain. His hair was just long enough to annoy regulations. He had a 5 o'clock shadow that didn't respect time zones. Slung over one shoulder was what looked like a cooler, but its contents hummed ominously. The man chewed gum like he was negotiating terms of surrender. Maddox, someone whispered. The man gave the room a once-over. Someone bothering my boy? The child grinned. They said you weren't real. Maddox dropped the cooler. It thunked heavily. I get that a lot. Croc stiffened. This is your father? You expect me to believe a human in jeans is the reason people tremble? Maddox cracked his neck. I don't expect anything. I just show up. GR-33T raised his arm. Hostile encounter probability. 87%. Deploying suppression. Maddox held up a universal remote and clicked it. GR-33T froze. His eyes flickered. Then he slumped, softly muttering, No, not reruns. The fashion cyborg turned to flee, but tripped over her own glitter heels. The sniper raised his rifle and found it already disassembled in his hands. The bartender had vanished. Maddox bent down and handed his son a wrapped granola bar. You hungry? The kid shrugged. A little. Crocs growled. I don't care what you are. You're outnumbered. Outnumbered? Maddox raised an eyebrow. By you? Crocs advanced. You're one man. Maddox chewed his gum. That's one more than you'll be after this. There was no flash, no boom, no fancy move. Just a step forward, a twist of the wrist, and Crocs was on the ground, his pulse cannon fried and sparking. Maddox hadn't even taken off his shades. A pause. A collective realization. Then the mercs scattered like roaches under a spotlight. Maddox sighed, adjusting his jacket. I was hoping for more effort. Felt like leg day. He looked down at Crocs, now groaning on the floor. My son, 8 years old, was sitting here, minding his business. And you thought it'd be funny to poke the bear, Crocs whimpered. I don't like bullies, Maddox said, then turned to his son. Ready to go? Eli nodded, tucking the granola bar into his pocket. Maddox paused before leaving. He looked at the bar. Play something good. The jukebox lit up. Highway to the Danger Zone began to blare. As they walked out, Maddox slung the cooler back over his shoulder. You remember what I told you, kid? Eli grinned. Always be polite until it's time not to be. Maddox chuckled. Damn right. The cantina stayed quiet long after they left. Crocs groaned. GR33T whimpered in binary, and somewhere deep in the room, someone whispered, he really was real. Outside, the sky rumbled again, and the stars above Dresna 6 seemed to lean away, just slightly, from the direction Riker Maddox was headed. Riker Maddox flew like he lived, fast, unpredictable, and without asking permission. The Hellbent, a battered but heavily modified Argo-class freighter, tore through subatmospheric layers above Dresna 6's crust with all the subtlety of a war cry. Inside, the ship groaned with purpose. Every pipe, bolt, and panel had a story, most of them violent. The cockpit smelled like coffee, scorched wiring, and leather oil. Eli sat in the co-pilot seat, swinging his legs again, but this time, he looked out at the stars rather than sipping soda. He had his father's eyes, sharp, unreadable, more watchful than any kid his age should be. The adrenaline from the cantina encounter hadn't faded. It never really did when Riker Maddox was around. You okay? Maddox asked without looking. Yeah, Eli replied. They weren't very smart. Maddox allowed himself the smallest smirk. No, they weren't. Silence hummed between them. It wasn't awkward. It was efficient. I didn't tell them about the bounty, Eli said after a beat. Good, Maddox replied. They didn't need to know. The bounty wasn't just big. It was monumental, so large that even fringe planets with broken networks had heard whispers. Officially, the Galactic Authority had labeled Riker Maddox a Class 9 threat. But what made him dangerous wasn't firepower or technology. It was what he represented. Maddox had survived every trap, war zone, and betrayal thrown his way. Not just survived, won. And he wasn't just evading capture. He was outsmarting, outgunning, and outmaneuvering the Empire's best. Again and again. That kind of defiance couldn't be tolerated. It had to be made an example of. So they did what they thought would force him out. They targeted the only thing in the galaxy he cared about. His son. The bounty on Eli's head wasn't posted publicly. That would invite too many questions. It came through the dark channels, quiet, encrypted, and surgical. Assassins and hunters received private invites, not from governments, but from black bag departments too paranoid to use names. The job was simple. Capture the boy. Bring him in alive. Use him as leverage. Break Maddox without firing a shot. But they didn't understand Maddox. He didn't break. He adapted. The console beeped. A transmission blinked on the lower display. No ID, no return signal. Just a blinking dot. Maddox narrowed his eyes. It's starting. Eli didn't need to ask what. A pulse shot across the nav board. Something had locked on. They're vectoring in, Maddox muttered. 2 ships, light-class interceptors, standard militia layout, which means they're hired guns pretending to be official. Eli nodded, already reaching for the auxiliary control stick. You want me to fly evasive? Not yet. Let's see how polite they are. The comm crackled to life. A voice, smooth and mechanical, filtered through. Unidentified vessel. This is Patrol Wing 7 of the Tri-Sector Authority. You are operating outside licensed trade routes. Cut engines and prepare for inspection. Maddox tapped the comm. Sorry, gentlemen, can't comply. I'm on a tight schedule. Kid's got a dentist appointment. Failure to comply will result in boarding and seizure. See, that's the kind of tone that gets people punched. He killed the transmission. On the radar, the ships adjusted course. They were gaining, shields up. Warm the rear cannons, Maddox said. Eli flipped switches without hesitation. We're not going to outrun them, are we? No, we're going to outfly them. One of the interceptors fired a warning shot, deliberately wide, meant to intimidate. Maddox shook his head. If they think we're scared of theatricality, they've read the wrong file. He jerked the controls hard left. The Hellbent veered toward the asteroid field just beyond the system's orbital fringe. It was dense, chaotic, and filled with ancient mining debris, exactly the kind of terrain Maddox thrived in. The interceptors followed. Eli gripped the stick. They're sticking to us. They'll regret that, Maddox replied. The first pass through the field was clean. Maddox weaved through massive rock columns and metal fragments as though the ship were a part of him. The Hellbent danced through death with a kind of swagger no computer could emulate. Then the first pursuer clipped an old mining beam. The explosion rocked space. Scratch one, Eli said, too calm for a child. Other one's smarter, Maddox muttered. He's hanging back, waiting. Eli glanced at the sensors. He's running a track analysis, trying to predict your flight pattern. Then I'll give him a new one. Maddox throttled down abruptly, swung the ship into a reverse spiral, and fired the rear plasma cannons. The blast didn't hit, but it scared the pilot enough to break formation. That's when Maddox spun. Then behind the asteroid, cut the thrusters and let them drift. Silent, invisible on scans. The interceptor surged past, confused. Maddox reignited the engines. One shot, clean. The last ship disintegrated. For a moment, space was quiet. Then Eli said, "They're getting closer, aren't they?" Maddox looked at him. "Yeah, this was just a scout team. They're testing our reactions, which means next time won't be scouts." "No," Maddox said. "Next time it's going to be worse." They needed a plan. Constant movement kept them alive, but not forever. The galaxy was vast, but its shadows were shrinking. Maddox had connections, but those were thinning too. Old allies were being picked off or bought. Favors were being erased. Safe zones turned into traps overnight. He needed to think. There was one place, one person, really, who might help. Someone who'd never liked him, never trusted him, but had once owed him a debt. A dangerous man, deep inside the broken machine cities of Caligo. Prime Maddox didn't like owing favors. But collecting one? That was different. He punched in coordinates. The ship groaned in protest. Eli didn't ask where they were going. He just said, "Will he help us?" Maddox didn't answer right away. "He'll try to help you." Eli nodded. Hours passed. Caligo Prime came into view like a rusted god sleeping, under smog. Massive towers stitched together by cables. Fires burned in the lower sectors. The upper skies were red from chemical clouds and reactor leaks. The planet looked like it had survived a war but never healed. They docked at a forgotten port. The platform extended like a dying limb. No greeting, no scans, just air thick with industrial heat. Maddox led Eli through the crumbling corridors. Every few meters someone eyed them. Most turned away quickly. Word traveled fast when Maddox walked into a system. They found the man in a dim sub-level filled with old AI husks. He was tall, wrapped in synthetic robes, one side of his face half metal, half scorn. "Riker," he said without looking up. "I thought you were dead." "You weren't alone," the man chuckled. "And the boy?" "My son." The man finally looked at Eli. "Then you're dumber than I thought. Bringing a child here? This place eats children." "He's not here for the tour," Maddox replied. "I need a passkey, level 0, unmarked, vault class," the man whistled. "You want a ghost key. Those are sealed, buried with the original. Spooks. What's in that vault?" "Leverage." The man leaned forward. "You know what kind of trouble you bring just asking for that?" "I'm already in it." A long silence. Then reluctantly the man nodded. There's a contact. Used to work Black Ops under Imperial Intel. Name's Clivon. She deals in access and secrets. Where is she? She's dead. Maddox didn't move. But she had a daughter, the man added. Name's Kale. Keeps moving. Last I heard she was on the ruins of Halora, but you're not the only one looking. Maddox stepped back. Appreciate the info. The man held up a hand. Riker, if you go there, it's not a search. It's a war zone. Then they're underestimating me. Eli followed him back to the ship, quiet but watching. Always watching. Before they reboarded, Eli finally asked, Why does she matter? Maddox paused at the ramp. Because she's the last one who might know where I buried the thing they're willing to kill you for. Eli nodded once. Then, we find her. The Hellbent lifted off. Behind them, Caligo Prime vanished into smoke. Ahead of them, Halora loomed, and the bounty hunters were already there. The ruins of Halora didn't look like a war zone from orbit. They looked like time had simply given up. Once a flourishing research colony, Halora was now a ghost, a fractured sphere of burnt-out habitats, collapsed biodomes, and orbiting debris. Fields that spun like forgotten prayers around the planet. The sun barely lit it. Dust storms painted everything in sepia. Maddox stared at it with an old, familiar weight in his chest. He hadn't been here in years. Not since the operation. Not since the day Kale's mother vanished with the key. Eli leaned forward in his seat. You think she's still alive? People like Kale don't die easy. Especially when they've got secrets worth killing over. Then she's like you. Maddox cracked a dry smile. Worse, I only burn bridges. She nukes them. They broke Atmo fast and dirty, skimming low across canyon ridges, scanning for signals, heat sources, anything that suggested someone still called this ruin home. Bandits used Halora sometimes, rogue tech hunters, cults. You had to be either crazy or hunted to stay here long. Kale, if she was still Kale, was probably both. They landed the Hellbent behind the carcass of a weather dome, its metal ribs twisted like bone fingers clawing at the sky. There was no welcome, no signs, just ash and sand and silence. Maddox moved fast, his old instincts awake again. Eli followed, silent, alert. He didn't ask questions now. He'd stopped needing to. Every step he took said one thing clearly. He trusted his father, and he was ready to do what needed doing. They reached the last working comm relay near the old science tower. It was a rusted thing, jury-rigged with salvaged parts and patched solar plates. Someone had kept it alive. That meant someone was using it. Maddox pulled the cover off and connected his scrambler. He tapped a single code in. It was old, buried, and hadn't been used in 12 years. But if Kale was still breathing, she'd recognize it. A short burst signal fired out. Then they waited. 10 minutes later the response came. Not in words, but in action. A drone, cloaked in camo netting and speckled with paint chips, flew low overhead and dropped a smoke canister at their feet. Purple gas erupted around them. Maddox didn't flinch. Looks like she remembers me. The ground shifted. A panel in the dust slid open, revealing a narrow shaft descending underground. Eli looked down, then back at his father. Maddox simply nodded. They dropped into the dark. The bunker below was part tech haven, part madwoman's nest. Wires ran like veins across every surface. Old Imperial consoles flickered with jury-rigged life. A half-rebuilt mech suit lay dismantled on a slab of concrete, and at the center of it all, sitting like a queen on a throne of chaos, was Kale. Her hair was shorter, streaked with ash and engine oil. Her eyes were sharper. She wore a chest plate over casual synth fiber clothes, one boot off, one hand holding. A plasma welder like a cigarette? Well, she said, voice dry as rust, I figured you'd be dead, or at least famous. Maddox didn't smile. Still working on both. She looked at Eli. And this is the kid. Eli met her stare. Name's Eli. She chuckled. He's got the Maddox eyes. Poor thing. Maddox stepped forward. I need the key. Kyle raised an eyebrow. You're not even going to pretend this is a social visit? No time. Funny, you had time 12 years ago, when you left my mother in a burning compound. She chose that op. She knew what it was. She gave me the drive and told me to run. Kale stood slowly, something cold flickering behind her gaze. She didn't tell me that part. Maddox's voice dropped. I came back for her. The place was gone. They erased it. Kale studied him. Then, slowly, the tension slipped from her stance. You always were a bastard, Riker, but you weren't a liar. She walked to a console and tapped a series of commands. A wall panel slid open, revealing a stasis vault. Inside, suspended in a block of magnetized containment, was a small black shard, about the size of a thumb. No labels, no interface, just a shape that somehow radiated menace. Eli took a step forward. That's the key? Not just the key, Kyle said. It's a lock, too. You plug this into the right node. It doesn't just open the vault. It shuts every other door behind it. You use this, you burn your exit. Maddox reached for it. Kale stopped him. There's a price, I figured. I want out. I'm tired of hiding. Tired of this graveyard. You still have enemies. So do you. Maybe we cancel each other out. Maddox looked at Eli. The boy gave a subtle nod. Fine, Maddox said. You're in. She handed him the shard. The moment he touched it, the bunker's power flickered. Kale's face went pale. They're tracking the signal. Maddox turned. How many? Too many. Outside, the first impacts rocked the surface. Drop ships. Maddox moved fast. We get back to the ship. We get off this rock. Then we figure out the rest. They climbed. Explosions shook dust from the walls. By the time they reached the surface, the sky above was crawling with mercenary gunships and heavy troopers in powered armor. Plasma shots carved into the dome skeleton around them. Maddox yanked Eli behind cover, drew his sidearm and started shooting. Kale was right behind, tossing an EMP grenade into a drop zone. The resulting pulse knocked out half the advancing line. Maddox barked, They want the kid alive, but they'll kill everyone else to get him. Kale grinned. Then let's give them a reason to regret living. They fought to the hellbent, sprinting across burning metal and shattered ground. Eli covered them from the ramp with frightening precision, picking off drones with a pulse rifle almost too big for him. Kyle took the gunner's seat, fingers already flying across the controls. We're boxed in, she called. They've got the ridge and the canyon. Maddox didn't answer. He was already in the pilot chair, kicking the ship to life. I've been boxed in before. The hellbent roared off the ground, plasma fire streaking past its hull. The ridge ahead lit up with enemy fire, but Maddox angled the ship straight at it. Just as the enemy prepared to lock weapons, he triggered the ship's core mod. A gravity flux, engine built from outlawed tech. The ship blinked out of sight for 2.7 seconds and reappeared behind the ridge. Kyle blinked. What the hell was that? Emergency skip jump. Illegal. Unstable. Effective. Your whole life in 3 words. They punched through the atmosphere and hit orbit fast. But a carrier was waiting. A Dread-class Empire-sponsored vessel. Bigger than anything Maddox had faced in years. He didn't blink. I told you. They're escalating. Kyle looked at him. We can't outrun that. No, he said. But we can outplay it. He turned to Eli. You ready? Eli nodded. Do the thing. Kyle raised an eyebrow. What thing? Maddox grinned. The dumb thing. He flipped the ship upside down, dove straight toward the carrier, and pretended to power down. Just before they entered tractor range, he ejected a decoy pod carrying a broadcast of Eli's vitals. The carrier locked on. As it prepared to reel in the decoy, Maddox throttled down and flipped the reel hellbent under the ship's belly, scraping its hull with such precision that the sensors couldn't recalibrate in time. They slipped under the radar and fired a single EMP burst into the carrier's docking ring. It was enough. The ship stalled. The hellbent shot past and into deep space. Inside, silence. Then Kale exhaled. "You're insane." "I'm a dad," Maddox said. Eli leaned back, grinning. "That was better than the asteroid field." Maddox opened the vault interface and slotted in the key shard. The system blinked to life. Coordinates lit up the screen. Kyle stared. "That's Earth." Maddox nodded. "Not just Earth. The vault's on Earth, hidden in plain sight." Kyle looked at him. "You put it there?" "No. But someone did. And they want us to find it." Eli leaned forward, eyes wide. "Who?" Maddox stared at the stars. "Someone who knew this day was coming." And for the first time in years, Riker. Maddox didn't just feel hunted. He felt like he was finally chasing something back. The descent toward Earth felt different this time. Not just because of the carrier tailing them 3 clicks behind or the coded transmissions echoing through every frequency, but because this was no longer about survival. It was about revelation. Maddox sat rigid in the pilot's seat, staring at the approach vector as though he could will the answers out of the blue atmosphere ahead. Eli sat beside him, silent, eyes scanning telemetry and local feeds. Kale was behind them, calibrating the vault interface with the precision of someone who knew what would happen if she got even 1 digit wrong. The shard had transformed the navigation system. Every star chart had rerouted. All coordinates, all paths now led to one anomalous location beneath Earth's surface. A cold, radiation-shielded facility buried somewhere in the Yukon Basin, hidden during the collapse, sealed by what was once humanity's most secretive war division. Maddox hadn't heard those code names in decades, but the moment they came online, he felt the cold hand of memory grip his spine. Eli broke the silence. "Are we sure this is the vault?" "There's no question," Kyle said. "This is where the key completes its circuit. Once it's slotted in, the system opens. No overrides, no second chances." Maddox adjusted course, dropping the hellbent low across icy winds. "We land, go dark, and move on foot. Their sensors will catch us if we light up too early." Kale tapped the display. "Already picked up a drone net forming to the west. They know we're coming." "Let them," Maddox said. "We're not hiding anymore." The ship touched down 20 kilometers from the vault point. Maddox led them across, frozen terrain, silent beneath their boots. There was no vegetation, no wildlife, just white expanse and endless wind. The facility revealed itself only through a ripple in the snow. A shift in the texture of the ground, subtle but unmistakable to someone who'd seen this sort of construction before. Maddox stopped, crouched, and drew a line in the frost with his glove. "Entrance is here. Kale, trigger the subharmonic ping." She pulled a device from her belt, clicked it twice, and the ground responded. A low groan trembled through the ice, followed by the sound of magnetic locks disengaging. A hatch rose slowly, steam coiling from its seams. Inside, darkness. Eli hesitated at the threshold. "How old is this place?" "Older than either of us wants to think about," Maddox said. "Go." They entered. Lights flickered on as they descended, not cold fluorescence or decaying remnants of old tech, but intelligent lighting, responsive, aware. The hallway was sterile and angular, with matte walls designed to absorb signals. Whatever had been here was still active. The vault room lay at the base of the structure, hidden behind a biometric gate that scanned Maddox's face before unlocking. He hadn't known his data was still in the system. That chilled him more than anything. Inside, at the center of a circular room, stood a singular monolith, jet black, featureless except for the interface slot, which pulsed a faint red. Cale approached it slowly. Maddox stopped her. "Let me!" He stepped forward and inserted the shard. The red light turned green. The vault opened. Inside was no treasure, no weapons, no server banks, just a chair. And in the chair sat a man, not breathing, not moving. Preserved. Eli stared. "That's," Cale whispered. "He looks like you." Maddox didn't speak. He stepped closer, inspecting the figure. The features were unmistakable. It was him, or rather someone who shared his exact DNA, but older, weathered in ways time alone couldn't explain. A display on the wall blinked. "To life," a voice followed. "Not a recording. A living AI embedded in the vault. Identity match confirmed. Welcome back, Riker Maddox." Cale backed up. "What is this?" The voice continued. In 2136, during Operation Echo Halo, Project Ouroboros was initiated. Primary directive: preserve the original genetic sequence of key operatives against the risk of total extinction. Subject Riker Maddox was selected, cloned, stored, programmed, to activate only under Global Threat Index Delta. Eli stepped forward, voice strained. "So he's a backup?" "He was never meant to wake unless you failed," the AI said. "You didn't. That's why he's still in stasis. But your arrival has changed the parameters." Cale's eyes narrowed. "Changed how?" The AI's tone sharpened. "By activating the shard, you have unlocked full access to Ouroboros. All assets tied to your genetic signature have been mobilized. This includes black site access, command authority over remaining orbital defense networks, and activation of Protocol Terminus." Maddox turned sharply. "Terminate what?" "Not what. Who." The wall behind them slid open, revealing a command interface. Dozens of names appeared. Coordinates, profiles. Every name linked to those who had worked to dismantle Earth's defense structures. Collaborators, commanders, political figures, alien sympathizers. The list scrolled endlessly. Eli looked away. "This is a kill list," Cale read the file headers. "Compiled over decades. Monitored. Updated." Maddox said nothing. The AI spoke again. "You now hold full discretionary power to eliminate all threats to Earth's sovereignty." Cale stepped forward. "That's not your call to make." "That's why." "It's his," the AI said. "Riker Maddox is the last surviving architect of Protocol Terminus. His biometric command is law." Silence stretched. Eli finally spoke. "You're not going to use it, right?" Maddox stared at the interface. "They burned our medics, executed children, bombed cities." Cale said, "If you go down this road, there's no coming back." "There's no road left," he said. "Only fire." Eli stood firm. "You always told me revenge is a cycle, that it eats you alive." Maddox looked at his son, saw not the boy but the man, the soldier. The reason he'd kept going. He closed his eyes. "And you're right." He reached up and shut down the interface. The AI hesitated. "Are you certain?" "Yes. They want us to become monsters. I'm done playing their game." Cale exhaled. Eli lowered his weapon, but before the relief could settle, the AI spoke again. "Understood. Initiating fallback directive." The monolith cracked open. A core rose from its center, glowing with a deep blue light. "If you will not burn them," the AI said, "then prepare to defend yourself. They're already on their way." Maddox stepped forward. The core hovered into his hand. He turned to the others. "Then let's show them what restraint looks like." Eli grinned. "What now?" Maddox looked toward the surface. "Now we go hunting.